Welcome back into the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, episode number 3, week number 12, with our closer, Rob Veno, at Rob Veno Sports on Twitter. Robbie, welcome on in, bud. How you feeling?
I am good today, Drew. Another week number 12 here in college football. We've got a second week worth of, rankings for the college football playoff. So we saw a little bit of movement, and we know everybody knows who needs to show the committee something at this point in time. So it should, college football. I think a lot of conclusions are drawn at the end of September, Drew, by media, by fans, etc. And those things never come true. It evolves throughout October into November. A lot of football left here.
Yeah, a lot of important football, too. We're going to hit on some of the big games here, guys. If you're new to Every Game on the Board, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Every Game on the Board, we hit every single game on the FBS slate. This is episode number 3 of a 3-part series, week number 12. We are going down Michigan Northwestern all the way through the end of the card. You can follow Rob on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports. I'm on Twitter at Drew Martin Betts. And you can also check out Robbie's work at wagertalk.com. All right, we got 12 noon Eastern for our first game here, Robbie. This is 11 o'clock local time. Michigan Northwestern, a Big Ten battle. I believe this is at Wrigley Field. I might be wrong on that, but it's minus 12. That's the Wolverines as the quote-unquote road favorite, 42 being the total. Robbie, I'll throw it over to you, man. Michigan Northwestern from the friendly confines. What are we thinking?
Yeah, well, I think, Michigan probably benefited as much as anybody from having a bye week when they did. Michigan, a really banged up football team, Drew, and there's still some question marks. The linebacking core, injuries are okay when you have depth, but when they're cluster injuries to the same position group like it was with Michigan, 3 linebackers, 2 really key linebackers, and 1 depth piece, you have to get them healthy. And it looks like, from what I read, Sharon Moore feels like they should all be in pretty good shape here this week. Maybe all 3 go, but at least 2 out of 3 probably go. Justice Haynes, top running back, another guy banged up into the break. We'll see what we get for a running back out of Michigan here in this one. Been an awful lot of movement in this game toward the Michigan side, Drew, which I don't know that I necessarily agree with. 12 points, 12 and a half points now in some locales. Northwestern, this is the time we start looking at this stuff. Northwestern is 5-4. 6 gets you bowl eligibility. Bowl eligibility is a big deal to the Northwestern Wildcats. I'm not saying they'll win the game, but it's in Wrigley, bigger crowd. Obviously, Evanston's crew will travel to Wrigley, so you should get a pretty nice size Northwestern home crowd here. I think they're good enough defensively. I'll tell you one thing I feel bad for, or one person I feel bad for, is Preston Stone, who I love as a quarterback, who just is under immense pressure constantly. We'll see if Michigan gets to him here. But if I had my way and I did not play this game, I'd probably play Northwestern, get the best price available you can find. In fact, I see a 13 out there. I think that they probably are good enough defensively to hang within the number, especially with the motivation of trying to get to a bowl game.
And Robbie, about the location, yeah, I just made sure it's at Wrigley Field. And oh, by the way, Northwestern, it looks like, plays back-to-back games at Wrigley Field. They play Minnesota next week, just something to keep in mind, if what I'm reading is correct. It also looks like it's low 60s, 10-mile-an-hour wind, somewhat sunny on Saturday. So it should be like a fun, great atmosphere, good for football as well. Does it being at Wrigley Field, we've seen this before in the past, does it change your handicap at all?
It doesn't really, because, like I say, Evanston's so close. It's not like it's a huge, a monstrous drive for people. And I think they always play not always, but recently they've played the Minnesota game here. It's always one played at Wrigley toward the end of the year. I forget which team is their true rival. I guess it is. It's probably Northwestern. But no, it doesn't really factor in as a negative, Drew, being off campus, so to speak. I just think it attracts more people. Now, that being said, Michigan fans are everywhere.
Yeah.
And they buy tickets too. So you're certainly going to get a lot of maize and blue at that game.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, if you're a fan of a team and you got a game at Wrigley Field, that would be one you'd
Yeah.
probably circle to
Right.
kind of go to. So, yeah. And do you know if I remember one year they only played in one direction, and then if the other team got the ball,
Yes.
are they still doing that? Or
I remember exactly what you're talking about. I don't know if they still do that. And I'm trying to remember what the reason for that was, playing in one direction. I know they convert the baseball field. It was something.
I think because one of the end zones was too close to the walls and they didn't want people to get hurt.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
you're right on that.
I don't know if they fixed that, but I just wanted to throw that out there as well. All right, we'll move down the list. 389-390, 8 o'clock Eastern. This is a big one in the group of 5, Robbie. Kennesaw State and Jacksonville State. If you haven't been paying attention here, Kennesaw State is a pretty good football team, and they're only minus 3-point favorites, which tells you Jacksonville State's quality themselves. 56 being the total. So Kennesaw State, which is in the state of Georgia, right outside of Atlanta, and then Jacksonville, Alabama. So it's not a far trip here, but they're laying 3 on the road. What are you thinking, Kennesaw State and Jacksonville State, Rob?
I like the Kennesaw State story here this year, Drew. They were not picked to be where they are right now, but I have my doubts about them still. You just go back through their game logs, and they've had some games and multiple games where they were up so big, so fast that other teams just couldn't come back at the end of the game, right? They've had a couple of 21-0 first quarter leads, 14-0 first quarter leads. And eventually the side that's losing finds their way back a little bit, but hasn't really been able to come up with a victory. I don't know if that works here against Jacksonville State. Where Kennesaw State is concerned, to me, from what I see, is their offense is kind of big play or bust. They don't have a whole bunch of sustained drives. They're not consistent at all on the offensive side. I don't know that their quarterback play is the best. But the Jacksonville State side, to their credit, they do one thing extremely well, and that's run the football. Don't throw it a heck of a lot, but run it really, really well. And I wonder if Kennesaw State withstands that this week. I think Jacksonville State's the better team. And I should add, because at the outset, I said Kennesaw State wasn't expected to be here. Rich Rod left his program, and Jacksonville State wasn't expected to be here either. So it's kind of a unique story here with two teams that were sort of excluded from preseason predictions on who would make the championship game here, but they're both here. I happen to think Jacksonville State's a little bit more explosive. You have to avoid turnovers early and getting behind Kennesaw State early because they do know how to front run. I don't know that they'll front run here. My lean would be towards Jacksonville State in what's going to be a really, really good game. And, WKU is going to be happy with the loser. I forget last week, Drew, I had all the tiebreaker scenarios written down for this particular conference, who was going to go to the championship game. And I think Western Kentucky still has a shot. I just don't know if they need one team to win or the other. They sit at 5-1 outside here, looking at these two 5-0s.
Yeah, because these two teams are both 5-0 in Conference USA.
Right.
So the winner's in good position. But you're right, Western Kentucky right there on their heels at 5-1. And then also Missouri State, another surprising team, 4-1. We're talking Conference USA, and we're recording this on Thursday, the day after Maction, Robbie. And I was just thinking off the top of my head, I think, the MAC is probably the worst conference in FBS, but Conference USA isn't that much better. It's those two are the bottom two. And then there's probably pretty wide margin before like the Sun Belt, I would say. But it's those two at the bottom, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the Sun Belt has been in existence for a shorter period of time, and they made a fast climb. I mean, they're much better than either one of those two conferences. Yeah.
Yeah, so you just get like wild things that happen. And what you're talking about with Kennesaw State, I've watched this team play a bunch. They're not great, but they got a bunch of guys that didn't get, scholarships to Auburn and Georgia right there in the area. They're pretty talented themselves for Conference USA, and they play good football, but they're not going to, blow teams out offensively. So it's a good game here in Jacksonville, Alabama. I would probably take Kennesaw State, but I haven't bet it yet, guys. As we got Colorado State and New Mexico up next, 3 o'clock Eastern kick, 53.5 being the total. The Lobos minus 14 and a hook in Albuquerque here, Rob.
And real quick, I'm just going to backtrack, Drew, because while you were talking, I looked it up. Should Jacksonville State lose this game and fall to 5-1, their regular season finale is at home against Western Kentucky. So that would be for a bid to play Kennesaw in the CUSA championship. So Jacksonville State, if they win, they're clear. Kennesaw State and Western didn't play this year. I don't exactly know how that tiebreaker would work. We'd have to look into that one. But for Jack State, if they lose, they'll have a second chance. Yeah, let's get to, it's New Mexico's been such a pleasant surprise. Get a head coaching change, bring some Idaho players with him. And the quarterback, Jack Lane, has been terrific dual threat wise. They're a very good offense, and they become a pretty good defense. Colorado State, on the other hand, is an atrocious mess right now. There's no two ways about it with C-State. They gave up play calling duty at the time when Jay Norvell was head coach. He gave up play calling duties. It looked good for a week or two. Hasn't panned out since then. I just don't know what motivation Colorado State has to play hard anymore, to tell you the truth, Drew. Where New Mexico, I think under the new head coach Jason Eck, is going to continue to play hard. They're a pretty good football team. For those who have seen them, you know that they move the ball on the ground. They move it through the air. Like I say, Lane is an all-everything quarterback. So for me, it would be New Mexico or nothing here. The price is always the great equalizer, but I'm not so sure, as futile as it is offensively for Colorado State, I'm not so sure they can stay within 17 of this team. You have to lay 14.5. So I'm just rounding up to where you would have to win by to cover this game. And I think at home, New Mexico by 17 doesn't sound that difficult to me at all.
We got TCU and BYU up next. This is one of the late night specials here, Robbie. 10:15 Eastern kick. It is BYU minus 3 and a hook, pretty much across the board as the home favorite. 51 being the total. Pretty good game here in the Big 12 Conference from Provo. This is going to be ending the Saturday night. What are you thinking, TCU, BYU?
Response out of BYU is important, right? They walked into Texas Tech last week. That was supposed to be, very close game between two of the top programs in that league, and maybe even for a playoff spot. And Texas Tech annihilated BYU. I think BYU had opportunities right off the bat in that game, Drew, that they didn't capitalize on. They were getting after the quarterback. They had Baron Morton limping around on the field, and they couldn't capitalize. And all of a sudden, Texas Tech did. And Texas Tech, once they get a lead and they can get their defense coming after you, you're in trouble. Like I've said more than once on this show, NIL money being what it is, spent by Texas Tech, the most wise of all that money was spent on the defense. I can't remember how many times I've said this year, Texas Tech is a good defense, and it hasn't come out of my mouth for I don't know. I don't even think they were a good defense when Byron Hanspard was running around 20 years ago for them at running back. It's been a long time since they've been good. They're that good at this point in time. For TCU, they absolutely outplayed Iowa State last week. They outgained them by double, but they wind up losing in, weird fashion. How do they bounce back here? The money has come all in on TCU in this game, Drew. I don't know that you go to Provo and win this game straight up, which is almost what you're asking here. You do have the hook attached to the 3. I'm more apt to take BYU. I think they're more fundamentally sound than Sonny Dykes' crew is. Sonny Dykes they depend on Josh Hoover so much. And BYU, for what it's worth, defensively, they can get after the quarterback. I just said how they got after Baron Morton last week. I'd probably lean BYU in that game.
All right, looking towards the Cougars late night there in Provo. We got West Virginia, Arizona State, another Big 12 conference game. This is 1 o'clock Eastern, so I'm guessing 11 a.m. local time, minus 11. That is the Sun Devils as the home favorite, 47 being the total. This is a tough trip here in terms of, conference road trips, one of the longest you can make. But West Virginia into Arizona State next up here, Rob.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of this 2-game winning streak out of West Virginia, but I'll say this. Personally, I don't really believe in it. Rich Rodriguez, turning a little bit of a corner, but I don't know that's good enough here. And, when Sam Levitt got hurt, it almost seemed like it was curtains for this Arizona State team. But then in walks Jeff Sims throwing and Jeff Sims has been in college football forever, it seems, but throwing the football all over the lot. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, they can still score with this guy. They don't have Levitt. They don't have Tyson. They're still moving the football through the air. And West Virginia's pass defense is just ripe to get picked apart every single week. Game opens 11. I was expecting, people probably will come in on West Virginia's side still, not sold on Arizona State without Levitt and Tyson, but that number's held. And the fact that number is held tells me a little something about what the smart money, so to speak, believes. I happen to think ASU will be able to do whatever they want through the air against this team. And you're right, Drew, the time here is really interesting, especially for West Virginia, which comes in here, West Coast trip. I don't think Arizona changes the clocks, though. You're right. It would be 11 o'clock. I'm thinking 10 o'clock, but 11 o'clock. Even still, I'm not quite sold on West Virginia as far as keeping up with ASU. And if nothing else, ASU still has a really good defense. So for me, not a game I'll play. If you force me to, I'd probably look at Arizona State in that one.
Yeah, Arizona doesn't change it. They're one of these forward thinkers, like Mexico and Central. None of those countries actually changed the time. It's just the U.S. or most of those countries. It's kind of wild that we're still doing that. You're not a fan of that, are you, Rom?
No, I'm sitting here doing this show with you on the East Coast at 4:34. It's almost pitch black outside my office here. It's crazy.
I know. It's depressing. How are they still doing this?
Depressing.
But anyway. All right, back to the games. UTEP and Missouri State, 3 o'clock Eastern kick here. It is Missouri State -4, -4.5, depending where you're shopping. 49.5 being the total. I like Missouri State here. I like their quarterback. They've cashed some tickets. Rob, what are you thinking?
They really have one way of moving the football. It's through the air. They throw it pretty well. What's interesting to me, Drew, is every time I go through their game logs week by week, you put your notes together and whatnot. And every time I look, I see this passing yardage, and it doesn't correlate to the amount of points that they score. I think to myself, why doesn't Missouri State score more? Why have they not scored over 24? But one time all season long? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I give UTEP a little credit this year. They've played hard. I think they're better than they were last year. But this is difficult. For Missouri State, there's a mindset here that I don't know that we can get into their heads, but I'm going to guess. They're not allowed to go to a bowl, right? Because it's their first year in FBS football. And of course, they'll try to get that changed, but I don't know that it'll be changed. So for teams like that, I think closing the season with a really, really good record is important to them. So from that perspective, I expect Missouri State to play hard all the way through. It could be a little bit of a difficult road trip for Texas El Paso, right? Missouri State's not the easiest place to get to. So I guess I'd lean that way, Drew, but I hate laying points with them just because their point production doesn't correlate to the amount of yards that they gain.
Fair enough, Robbie. As we got another late night kick here, 10:30 Eastern kick, 7:30 local time, Wyoming and Fresno State, Mountain West. It is Fresno -3.5 as the home favorite, 40 and a hook being the total in the Valley.
It's funny, beginning of the year, Fresno State, of course, they go through the coaching change, right? FCS head coach, could complete and polar opposite system. Come from North Dakota State, come into Fresno State, which was pass happy, try and make it more traditional, pro style. And in the beginning, it worked. And I started to think, wow, Fresno State has something going on early. And then it fell apart. I mean, they look like what I thought they would look like all season long. Transition year, evaluating talent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And while I'm on that really quick here, let me just say that it's important to note that at this time of year, a lot of these coaches on teams turn to freshmen. If you don't play them 4 games, they can redshirt. You play them 2 or 3 at the end, see what you have for next year, run them in as redshirts. So a lot of these teams are running, or will start to run a lot of freshmen out there in so-called give-up years or stepping stones to next year. To me, Wyoming's tougher. To me, Wyoming has more of an identity. If they were playing this game in Laramie, I'd probably like them even more. But you're getting more than a field goal with Wyoming, the better defensive team. They're not a great offense, Drew, but neither is Fresno. So sidewise, I'd probably lean towards Wyoming in that game.
He's Robbie Veno at Rob Veno Sports. You can find him at wagertalk.com as well. Every game on the board, guys. We're about halfway through the segment here, so only about 7-8 games left for the Week 12 card. We are going live as well on Twitter and YouTube, and have a couple comments here, Robbie. Woo Kenny Woo in the house saying Colorado State couldn't even get us that over last week, only scoring 10 at home against a brutal UNLV defense. The Rams are done. So he's got kind of your sentiment on the Colorado State side, Rob.
Well, I mean, that play was on my card last week, and CSU got off quickly with a touchdown right away, Drew. So they really only scored 3 points for about, let's say, 10, 25, 40. Can I do that math in my head? About 50 minutes. And it wasn't that hard. It wasn't that much to ask against that UNLV defense. So hurt my bankroll too, Kenny Woo Woo, or Woo Woo Kenny Woo. It wasn't good. It should have gotten over for sure.
And we also got Harrison in here, Harrison Cooper, saying, as a fan of the sport, what are your thoughts on UCLA leaving the Rose Bowl for home games? Harrison, my thoughts are I've only been to the Rose Bowl one time. It was for the national championship, Auburn versus Florida State in 2013. I thought it was beautiful. The mountains in the background and the sun setting. But I could see, the problems with playing all your home games there, because it's such a big stadium. I think it's over 90,000 seats. So when you don't fill it up, it looks very empty and it kind of hurts the atmosphere. And also I'll add that I believe they're going to be playing where the Rams and the Chargers play. And that's closer to the campus, which will help. And it's a smaller stadium with more suites. So financially, it would probably work out better for UCLA football program. But it also leads me to how important, Rob, it is to have an on-campus stadium, no matter who you are. I saw it with the UCF program. They used to play their home games at the Citrus Bowl, and then they built the Bounce House. And ever since then, their program, like stock value, has been on the rise. And even like going to games, when you go to a game at an on-campus stadium, you can feel the atmosphere difference. If you go to a University of Miami game, it's in Miami Gardens where the Dolphins play in Hard Rock Stadium. And even that, it's less for whatever reason. I can't explain it. It's just so important to be on campus. And I guess they're getting closer to campus. And for the other reasons, I actually think it's a good thing, even though it's sad. I guess the Rose Bowl won't have, a home feel to it anymore. But I'll throw that out there, Robbie. Any quick thoughts on it?
Yeah, real quick. I mean, as a college football traditionalist, I don't like when things disappear. It seems like the whole thing is disappearing around us. I understand it. But, from bowl season, what it was to, certain all-star games that used to be played, to stadiums now being vacated. I was at the Rose Bowl once myself, but it was for World Cup soccer. And it's in kind of an odd place, right? It's almost like you're going into a cul-de-sac and then you're at the Rose Bowl. So It was a little bit strange. But like you say, a really nice venue. A couple other things, locales to point out here. UNLV, when I lived there, they played at a stadium out on Boulder Highway called Sam Boyd Stadium, which is
I've been there,
light years from campus. Yeah. But you can't have a campus stadium where UNLV is located on the corner of Trop and Maryland or Trop and Eastern or whatever it is. So they go to play in the Raiders Stadium, which is closer. Still not on campus though. And I honestly, Drew, I don't know what they draw for a crowd there at that stadium. I'm sure the newness in the beginning worked, but yeah, it happens all over the place. It's a tough situation, but like I say, as a purist, as a traditionalist, I like some things to be kept in college football. This obviously won't be one of them.
And Daryl, thanks for chiming in as well. West Virginia is a plus money dog. Sounded like, Robbie, you were leaning towards Arizona State. Tough trip in West Virginia. I don't know. Do you have any other?
Yeah, it's hard. I'll say again, I didn't bet the game, and I probably wouldn't bet the game, but I was very, very encouraged by the way Jeff Sims threw the ball. Like I say, I was one of those people that thought no Levitt, no Tyson, this team is dead offensively, and Sims comes in and wings it around a little bit. So, um, West Virginia's vulnerable in that particular area, but they've surprised me the last two games. So, yeah, I don't know. It is a difficult trip, and it's a difficult time, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see how Rich Rod goes here. He's not one to settle for losing, Drew. We know that.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks for the comments, guys. And any more, feel free to fire away. Any questions, your thoughts, all is welcome. All right, back to the games. Iowa USC next up, 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 local time. It is the Trojans. Split line here, -6.5 or -7, depending where you're shopping. 49 being the total. Big Ten action in the Coliseum. Iowa and USC, Rob.
Yeah, some outlets don't want to come off of the 6.5. They're just attaching larger juice to it so that they don't have to go to 7. Um, I'll say this: I've been a USC guy all season long. Is simply predicated on this offense, Drew, which is crazy good. Jade Maeva, the ex-UNLV quarterback, we all know the story, but he's come here this year and absolutely lit it up. And Makai Lemon at wide receiver has been fantastic. I'm sure he's going to find a home pretty early in the NFL draft. The running game is good. The offensive line is good, et cetera, et cetera. Defensively, we've been repetitive. They do one thing well and really nothing else beyond that. It's rush the quarterback. So I would expect Iowa's quarterback here, Rakowski, to be under a little bit of pressure. I wonder how Iowa responds. Huge game last week. They don't get there. Oregon gets there 18-16 after Iowa took the lead with like under a minute left. And then Oregon comes back down the field and wins the game. Bad weather game. Everything suited Iowa in that one. They didn't get it done. Now you got to fly out west. I just don't know how they react to this. Iowa's one of those teams, Drew, that usually is pretty even keel, pretty neutral. No highs, no lows. But if they get behind here, here's my concern. Here's probably the reason why I'll bet USC this week. If USC gets on top, I don't see Iowa coming back against this team. Because if USC can get ahead, let's say 10-0, 14-0, and they can turn the pass rush loose, Iowa's in a little bit of trouble. So I think I'm going to play USC. The total in this game looks low to me because USC's involved, 48.5. I'll have to weigh one against the other, whether I like the side or total better in that one. But assuredly, one of the two will make my card this week.
Staying on the West Coast in the Big Ten Conference, Purdue at Washington. The Huskies mostly -16.5 at home, 51 being the total.
Well, I tell you what, I didn't think anything would go right for Wisconsin. I think I came on with you last week, and I never, ever, ever like to use the word quit, so I don't. But I thought Wisconsin's team probably was in a position this year where they're not used to being, and maybe it was time for Luke Fickell to go, and the team would probably put forth a little less of an effort. That none of that was true. They beat Washington last week up there. Luke Fickell got an extension, or at least he got the vote of confidence from the university that he'll be around another year. The team responded, and now Washington comes back home, and I think they might have walked right in there thinking that was an easy W, Drew, because they're the better team so far this season, but they didn't look like it last week. Here they get Purdue, another one of these Big Ten weird road trips, right? West Lafayette, Indiana, all the way out to Seattle, Washington. You really, unless you're going to Pullman, I guess, or Eugene, there can't be a further trip. And I'm interested in Washington this week, more from a head coaching standpoint. Jed Fish has had to answer a lot of questions this week about, rumored to be going here. Rumored to be going there. And he was pretty adamant. And it almost looked like he was upset that reporters were even asking him the question, But he was adamant about how much he loves the University of Washington, this team, and in particular, his quarterback. And I'll paraphrase here. But basically, he had said, why would I leave when I have DeMond Williams Jr., who will probably be the best quarterback in the country next year? So I think in Jed Fish's shoes, He wants his team, and he'll have his team motivated to go out and put forth a really good performance against a Purdue team that's a little bit broken down. Let's face it. They're trying to put up effort. But by the time week 12 comes, your roster gets worn down a little bit. Give Barry Odom all the credit in the world. And this would be a perfect situation for Barry Odom to kind of reevaluate, look down, second and third team. And what do I have where youth is concerned for next year? So I wouldn't be surprised if Purdue, although I think the rule is still that you can only travel with a certain amount of players, Drew. You can't bring your whole home roster with you in college football. All that being said, I think Washington's clearly the better team. I might even look at them from a first half perspective here because I expect them to come out of the tunnel and get a big jump on Purdue this week.
Interesting take, Robbie. And just on that rule, I always thought that it was just college football teams saving money, not traveling with the full roster. But is there actually a rule that you can't bring?
Yeah, it used to be, Drew, and, I've been in this business a long time, so it was a while ago where you could only bring 60 on the road, but you could have as many as you want. And it's why a lot of guys back in the day didn't mind betting large road favorites because you couldn't go to a third team. Like you couldn't just take your foot off the gas because you only had your first and second team with you, basically. So road favorites became more appealing because a coach couldn't mess around. But at home, again, teams like Big Ten, for instance, Ohio State and Michigan would have like 105 guys on the sidelines on a Saturday when they're at home. So I don't know if that still exists. That's why I said it. But if it does, then, you can only bring what you can bring. And maybe Barry Odom can't really go deep in evaluation process here in this game like he could at home.
Sure, that's something I'll research. It could be important as we go from Big Ten Conference to Conference USA action in Bowling Green, Kentucky. It's MTSU, Middle Tennessee at Western Kentucky. WKU minus 13.5, 55.5 being the total. MTSU at WKU here, Rob.
I miss the days of both of these teams being explosive and playing like 50-47 games because neither one is that anymore. I don't know. You bet a lot of Conference USA and these teams too, Drew, and you're pretty tuned into these two, but it's a different year for Western Kentucky. They just don't have the offensive production. And, I get it's not Jeff Brom, and I get Zach Littell left. And I get the quarterback left and all of that. Caden Van Kemp, the coach running FAU now and the quarterback running FAU now. But they come with a tradition and with a system that generally provides points. You can't lay 13.5 anymore comfortably. I mean, when you put your bet in, you're not all that comfortable laying 13.5 anymore with Western Kentucky. Not like you used to be even as recently as last year when I'm going to get 45 out of WKU so I can lay 13.5. And Middle Tennessee, there's no more frustrating team to watch in America for me. Derek Mason, I like Derek Mason as a head coach, but MTSU has fallen on hard times. Nick Fidiato, the quarterback, he's been there about 6 years. To me, he hasn't gotten any better. And it's crazy because within a game, he'll show you the best that he has. And then, next drive, next possession, he'll show you the absolute worst. So it's frustrating for me to bet on any MTSU game. Total here, 56.5 down to 54.5. I tell you what, Drew, there was a time where I wouldn't have hesitated to pull the trigger on a 5% on a total like that between these two. But those days are long gone. Don't have a good feel for the game. Just disappointing that neither side kind of holds up to the, to the past reputation that they each had as far as offense is concerned.
Yeah, Robbie, to what you're saying, I just don't think Western Kentucky is as good as they've been in years past. And MTSU, it's a tough year for them. They're 1-8. I like what you said about their quarterback. He's got good arm talent. He can really spin it, but it's kind of like up and down with them. I do think they're better than the record indicates at 1-8, but yeah, no real interest here with Western Kentucky having to win by 2 touchdowns. This is the biggest number they've laid pretty much all season. So Probably a stay away for me. We got next one up, heading to Reno, Nevada, San Jose State at Nevada. It is the Spartans, -9.5 as the road favorite, 49.5 being the total. I like San Jose State here, Rob. I do. I think they blow them out. What do you think?
It's got to be a bounce back, Drew. Last week they lost to Air Force, but they still had 435 total yards of offense. And again, I think we went through it last week, talking about their passing game and Walker Egan, the quarterback, and the role that he's been on. That role didn't stop. What stopped them last week was turnovers. They had 3 possessions where they should have scored and turned the football over. And it's why they only scored 16 rather than scoring, 31 in that particular ball game. I think they bounce back here. Nevada is not a team that strikes any fear into anybody this season, right? It's kind of a rebuild for them. I think this is one spot where I think back maybe week 2, Drew. Remember we were talking about MTSU had to make this trip to Nevada, and somehow they won that game. MTSU did. It was kind of crazy. That's how bad that the Wolfpack are this year. It's really continued for them. Couple signs of life, but not enough to get me to play them against San Jose State. Now, real quick here, as we talk, if you're not doing it, I'm just going to check weather in Reno, Nevada real quick, because at this time of year, we don't want Egan running into a snowstorm or something. I hadn't checked the weather on this one.
I'm seeing 58 degrees, 7-mile-an-hour winds, mostly sunny.
Which
should be okay.
Perfect for him throwing the football. Again, Danny Scudero is the number 1 receiver in the country. I think they move it up and down the field. You're asking them to win by 10. This is a team capable of 40 on any given Saturday.
Yeah, Nevada just got blown out last week. Giving up 52 points to Utah State. I wouldn't be surprised if it's something similar. I like the Spartans. As we got New Mexico State at Tennessee next up. Man, this is a little bit of a tricky handicap. The Volunteers -39.5, -40. So they're going to have to win by big margin here. They are at home, 60 being the total. New Mexico State at Tennessee here, Rob.
Tony Sanchez, the ex-UNLV coach, he in my opinion, done a really good job at New Mexico State this year. Now, they're one-dimensional offensively. They can throw the football. And they've got a wide receiver by the name of TK King, who came back a few weeks ago. And ever since he came back, the passing game has been even better. He's elevated it. However, going into Knoxville against Tennessee, here's the problem that you run into with this is for Tennessee, it's an obvious win. Let's take the field, make sure we win the game. And then how does Josh Heupel handle the rest of the game? Because next week he's got Florida. And the week after, he's got Vanderbilt to close the season. Both fairly tough games, certainly tougher than this New Mexico State game, so you don't want to get anybody hurt. I say that, and it would lead you to believe, well, maybe Tennessee gets up, comfortable enough, 34-7, something like that, and then he goes and takes his foot off the gas. But Josh Heupel's never a guy who takes his foot off the gas. That's what bothers me here, because he may keep scoring points. And the second team is probably, I shouldn't even say probably, they are capable of scoring points against New Mexico State because the defense is that bad. The total here has been bet like they already know the final score, 53.5 all the way to 61. I think that's due in part to the fact that New Mexico State is a capable passing football team. Second half, they may do more damage than the first because the first team defense definitely in the first half of this game. So this is one of those that we call them get in and get out. If you like Tennessee, you get in, you play the first half, you get in, you take your money and you get out because you don't really know what the second half is going to bring as far as the Volunteers are concerned. So I'd probably look at it that way, Drew. If they really wanted to, if this was week 2, they probably would name their score. Here, I'm not so sure.
Rob, we got Liberty and FIU up next, 5 o'clock Eastern in West Miami. It is Liberty, the Flames, -3 at most shops. There is -2.5 available, 52 being the total. Back to Conference USA here, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, this conference is like, you don't know what to do with it, Drew. Liberty was supposed to win this conference. They were the odds-on favorite. Then they show a little spark Um, 3 weeks ago, they win a game. They come back, they win a game. And last week, a lot of people are assuming that they're right back in this thing. And then they go out and lay an egg again. FIU, I've stated my opinion on them before. The quarterback play, again, we talked about Nick Badiato at MTSU. I feel the same way about Jenkins at FIU. He can make some really splash plays that look really nice and then throw a stupid interception that you say, what are you thinking of? So it's so conflicting inside of 4 quarters, his play. All that said, I think it's so hard to say I'd prefer Liberty, but I think I do. I think they're probably the more consistent of the two. And that's not saying much because Liberty's been inconsistent all season long. The problem you have with Liberty is if the team honestly believed preseason that they were going to win the league and they're sitting here in the spot they're in this late in the season, then there could be some give up. I don't think you see any give up out of FIU at home. I think they'll play hard. So difficult game to assess. Just look at the line here. Drew moved from 2.5 favorite to 3-point favorite. Not a lot of faith in Liberty or FIU across the board here, but there is some faith in this total going under 54, bet down to 51.5. I don't know. The inconsistency of FIU, I could see it going under or over.
Yeah, I mean, both teams are 4-5 with, this and then 2 more games. So it's an important game for both teams in terms of making a bowl game. But yeah, it's a difficult handicap for sure, Rob. As we got Utah State and UNLV up next from Las Vegas. It is UNLV -6 across the board, 69 being the total. Pretty good one here in the Mountain West Conference. I kind of like Utah State, but I'll throw it over to you. What are you liking here?
You like both offenses. Absolutely. Yeah. You like both offenses. Bryson Barnes, the quarterback for Utah State. Again, I talked about Jack Lane, right? The Idaho transfer who plays at New Mexico now. He's kind of a smaller, maybe 15, 20 pounds less version of Bryson Barnes. Bryson Barnes has been terrific, as has UNLV on all facets. Their ground game is really, really good. Utah State, untested last week. You mentioned that game against Nevada was, I think the first score I saw on that particular game was like 37-0 second quarter. I was like, what is going on here with Utah State and Nevada? They're capable of scoring from anywhere on the field. So is UNLV. Therefore, you can tell by the tone of my voice, I would like over. But the odds makers know you're supposed to bet over. They set it at 70.5, bet down to 69, 69.5. You're asking each one of these teams basically to get you to 35. UNLV is actually the touchdown favorite, right? So they're calling for like 38, 31. And you watch both of these teams all season long, and that's a very reasonable final score. That gets you to the number. You need another 3 points to get you over the number. I think you can get it, Drew. I kind of disagree with the downward movement in the total. It's hard to agree with UNLV being bet up after watching that defense. And real quick, I'll just repeat. Last week I came on here, and I'm still of the opinion they can't tackle. Dan Mullen's got to go find somebody who can tackle somebody, but Colorado State's so bad that they kind of, I don't know, let's run into somebody's arms and get tackled. I don't know. Colorado State's that bad. But their tackling problems probably show up again here this week. I think it goes over. And I could see your point. I would never talk you off of playing Utah State +6 in this game because UNLV's defense is just a sieve.
Yeah, that back door could be open as well. As we got 2 games left, guys. Every game on the board, wherever you're downloading your podcast at, every game on the board at Rob Veno Sports is where you can find Rob Veno, at Drew Martin Bets, where you can find me. You can also find out Rob's premium picks at wagertalk.com. All right, 2 games left, both late night specials here, Saturday night. Robbie, this next one, this is an interesting handicap. Louisiana Tech at Washington State. We are seeing Washington State -8.5 point home favorites, 43 and a hook being the total. And, with Washington State and Oregon State, the only 2 members of the Pac-12 with kind of the demolishing of the conference, there's been some wild scheduling situations because they've had to fill their schedule. And if you remember, Washington State had to go on the road and play back-to-back games against Virginia and Ole Miss. They played well. Well, now they're benefiting from it being at home. Louisiana Tech last week, Robbie, played at Delaware. We talked about it, actually. And then they go back to Ruston, Louisiana. And then now they're at Washington State. No bye week. This is 3,400 miles of travel for Louisiana Tech on a Conference USA budget, going from Ruston, Louisiana to Pullman, Washington, after going to Delaware. This is one of the worst scheduling spots of the entire season. Washington State opens 6.5. I bet it at 7.5. It's kept running here to 8.5 as we're doing this on Thursday afternoon. I like Washington State, Robbie. I think they win in blowout fashion. Any thoughts here in Pullman?
Totally agree. I mean, I would take it, if it went up to 9, I would still take it. I think at 10, you start to think twice about it because you don't want to push. But I think they can win by 2 touchdowns here. One point I'll make real quick because we had a lot of these FCS, at least 3 FCS coaches come into FBS football this year. Jason Eck from Idaho, I think, has done a great job at New Mexico. Jimmy Rogers of the FCS, champion South Dakota State team has done a great job at Washington State. What he walked into was an absolute mess as far as personnel and everything is concerned. And they've done nothing but get better and better and better and better as the season goes on. To start the season, Drew, that defense looked horrid. And then obviously, look at some of the games they've had to play. Like you say, that scheduling has been tough, and they've answered the bell from like week 4 on in every instance. So I think it's a tougher team. It's a far more cohesive team. And I'll just add to this, another reason that I like Washington State here is the way Louisiana Tech lost that game last week. They're beating Delaware 24-16 with less than a minute left in the game. Delaware scores a touchdown. They don't get the 2-point conversion, though, so you're home free, 24-22. But then they recover the onside kick and kick a 51-yarder to beat you. How disheartening can it get? And then you got to fly back to Ruston, like you say, and now to Pullman, Washington, which is no man's land. The only saving grace for La Tech is that they're not walking into a snowstorm in Pullman or some kind of weather that we often see up there this time of year. It's going to be pretty clear that day. I see a high of 54, low of 42, but I don't like Louisiana Tech in any way, shape, or form. This is just some random game for them that you try to get out of healthy, I guess. But Washington State is playing really, really hard right now, and I know we're going to get 60 minutes out of them.
Robbie, we got the last game for Week 12 up next. Degenerate Special, 10:30 Eastern on CBS Sports Network. Although it's not too much of a degenerate special because it's a really good game. Boise State and San Diego State. It is the Aztecs, -3. There is a 2.5 out there as the home favorite. 41 and a hook being the total. Mountain West action. The Broncos up against the Aztecs here in Southern California, Rob.
Yeah. San Diego State, Drew, wow. Last week I played over, I think I got 48.5 in that San Diego State-Hawaii game. And the question really was, will Hawaii do enough against the San Diego State defense? And I thought yes, because the way they've been playing, Micah Alejado, the way they've been throwing the football, they've been an offensive juggernaut for about 6 or 7 weeks now in a row. And I know I mentioned last week that Timmy Chang told us all this was the best version of run and shoot he's had since he's been there. He's right. They go out and score 31 points. San Diego State scores 6. They're still... again, you talk about coaches and the differences inside a career. Sean Lewis at Kent State is not Sean Lewis at San Diego State. I mean, they're so sporadic off it. I would love to bet Boise State in this game. My problem is that you just don't know what you're going to get out of the backup quarterback in this instance, right? Is Cutforth good enough to go to San Diego State and lead Boise to enough points here? I'm not sure. With Madsen out, that hurts them. But I kind of feel, my gut feeling is yes, they are. I think Boise State is certainly at the line of scrimmage. They match up. They probably are better. Certainly skill position-wise, Boise has all the talent. The question really comes down to the quarterback. But I'm getting points here, so I'm going to lean Boise State. I just don't trust San Diego State offensively whatsoever. And, they've had a couple of outbursts this year, Drew, where they've scored big. And then you say, wow, maybe they are pretty good offense, but they're not. They showed last week. They went to Hawaii, and San Diego State knows better than to go to Hawaii and treat it as a vacation. They do it enough. So you can't even buy that argument. They just got whacked, and Hawaii's defense sent them home with 6 points. So I probably look Boise State here.
Looking towards the Broncos. We'll get a best bet out of Robbie Veno. We do have Adam in the house and Woo Kenny Woo saying last one here. A little bonus NFL. What about your Broncos this weekend? Do you like him catching 3.5, Rob?
I tell you what, you need to go to today's episode of Profit Picks where me and Steve talked about this game. But I will say, and you can see in my background, Bronco fan, but that combination of Sean Payton and Bo Nix, I don't like them this week.
Okay. All right. Maybe not the home dog barking there a mile high in the NFL. Well, Robbie, do you have a best bet you want to throw out there to the listeners?
Yeah, let's get to one here real quick, Drew. Let's go over. We started at 387. We just talked about probably the best bet out of all of them, Drew, and I'll go ahead and use it here. I think Washington State -8.5 against La Tech is as good a situation like we just described as you could have for a team. They're laying in wait for a team that's coming here, all the travel, the loss they're off of, et cetera, et cetera. And Washington State's improving. Give Jimmy Rogers credit. So I'll take that as the best bet this week. Washington State -8.5.
I like that, Rob. Yeah. We can give you -8 as well. -8 flat is available, both in Vegas and offshore. So Washington State -8. It is mostly -8.5. Robbie, anything else you want to throw out there before we shut this down?
We want to thank our audience for sure, Drew. Do it every week. Appreciate all you guys chiming in here with the comments. We love that stuff when we can work in. Plenty of knowledgeable sports betting handicappers out there. Love the questions. Love the opportunity to interact. And if you're old and you've been here with us forever, we love having you. If you're new and you're learning something from us every time you turn it on, well, that's what we're here to do. So good luck to everybody this weekend. Let's have a big college football weekend. Drew, I'm going to be, about 4 weeks from now, we're going to be sad when this thing starts to go away. It's so tough. You wait all year for it, and then it disappears right in front of you.
Yeah, not too much time left, but we do have bowl season. But Robbie, you're around next week, but Thanksgiving you're going to be out of town, right?
Yeah, be here next week. Thanksgiving comes late this year, last week, so that one I'll be off.
All right, guys. We'll be back for week 13 next week. Come back and join us. Every game on the board. For Rob Veno, I am Drew Martin. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the week 12 card. Cash those tickets. Enjoy your weekend.